And the goal for today will be to not use so much, kind of, and be able to describe the premise of a book briefly and clearly, which was a challenge last time. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Valerie, and today we're gonna do a wrap-up of the books I read in April. So it's gonna be pretty simple. We're gonna go over them together. I'm gonna tell you what the books are about, my thoughts on them, without any spoilers. So let's go. First, I read Mile High by Tomforde. This is a hockey romance. It's told in first person and it's dual POV. It's the story of Stevie and Xanders. Stevie is a flight attendant for the hockey team and Xanders is a hockey player. They quite dislike each other at first. Stevie has sworn off athletes from her love life, but there's this forced proximity situation because she works for the team's plane. And then you follow their story. The FMC is, I don't know if we could say she's plus size, but she's a FMC with curves. So you get diversity, there's humor, there's great banter in this. I felt that the writing was quite refreshing. The story was flowing really well. You had believable characters. The dynamic between all the characters and the side characters was really fun. And throughout the story, you follow Stevie and Xander's journey to heal from their past. This story was beautifully touching. It was emotionally engaging. I felt connected with the characters. And the author's attention to detail was so good. You could see it in the tension, how she was able to slowly build it with little elements. My favorite being Xander's little kind of touches. For example, they're in the bar, he passes her and he just kind of brushes the back of his hand on her arm. Or like when she passes him on the plane, he just slowly touches her. Just those little things here and there to make you swoon and build slowly the tension. There were things that bugged me a bit, like the FMC's lack of confidence, but it was part of her arc, so I kind of got over it and loved the book even though it wasn't my favorite thing. Another detail that I really like and that I feel the author used really well is the phrase that both main characters had together. The author used it really well throughout the story and it made it even more powerful and became kind of iconic for that couple. So it's that kind of attention to detail that makes for me this story more. And the sneak peek we got of the main characters of the next book got me so excited for that book. I didn't read it yet, but I'm super excited to get to it because I think I'm gonna like it even more than this book. So overall, I rated it 4.5 stars, highly recommend. Next, I read Stronger Than Gold by June Harding. This is a dark, spicy fantasy romance. It's written in first person and you get the POV of all the main characters. This is the third book in the series. The first book is Thicker Than Gold and second book is Brighter Than Gold. And it's the kind of fantasy world where there's kings and kingdoms, but not much magic or magical creatures. A bit, but don't expect that to be the main aspect. So in this story, you follow Rhea. She becomes the consort, I want to say, to the king, and then you follow her story. I'm not gonna say too much because I think the fun is to go in a bit blind. But know that there's a kind of dub-sub relationship. There are dark elements, so please check the trigger warnings. There are some scenes that may be harder to read throughout the series. So this is this author debut series. I really love June's writing. I feel it's really flowing and easy to get into. Like the world is not too complicated and I feel you get rapidly into the story. And I feel that her writing is kind of refreshing. I don't know how to describe it. It's in her tone, the way she portrays romance and the characters and their interactions. There's something subtle but unique in her writing, and I've enjoyed everything she's written so far. So the thing is, if you want to try this series, you have to expect spice and also expect to be challenged in your beliefs in the things you like and don't like in a book. Because the author uses certain tropes that are not popular tropes, but I feel that she uses them really well and she convinces you that the story is good even though you may not like these tropes. Then again, I cannot be more precise, I don't want to spoil anything. But know that if you get into this, it's not the usual typical romance book and you may be challenged in the things you like and don't like. But if you go in and you're open to that and you go in with an open mind, I think you can really enjoy this. I think I rated the first book 4 stars, the second book 4.5, and this one maybe 4.25, something like that. The second book was really my favorite, and I have to say overall there is one prominent character that I didn't really like. Like, I didn't hate him, but I didn't care for him so much. But other than that, I really had fun reading this. And another thing that I really like from June Harding's books is that there's a lot of diversity. Regarding sexual orientation, gender identification, she has a way of portraying characters without assuming heteronormativity. I really appreciate that from her books. And then, just for fun, I'm doing a re-listen of the Madison Kate series by Tate James. I listened to the first book, Hate, this month. If you don't know about this series, it's a dark white shoes romance. It's told in first person and you only get the POV of the main female character. Her name is Madison Kate. The story basically is that she comes back after a year of exile. Something happened in her past three guys kind of wronged her. So when she comes back, she wants to take revenge on them. And when she arrives at her father's estate, she realizes that these three guys are living in her home and that one of the guys' mom is marrying her father. So in this, you get a snarky, badass heroine. Usually these kind of FMC can get on my nerves, but here Tate James is able to kind of just flirt with the line without her bugging me too much. And if you want to give this series a try, or just reread it, I highly encourage you to listen to the audiobook. It's a duet narration. These are the best narration. And duet narration is that the male narrator does all the male voices in the story, in the dialogues, even though the chapter is in the POV of the female main character. So you get more of a movie experience with the male and female narrator kind of exchanging replies in the dialogues. It's way more interesting. And the narrators are really good, so I highly encourage the audiobook. I gave this one a 5 stars the first time. I give it a 5 stars again because the experience is just so good. And if you're used to Waichus, there's kind of different dynamics in a Waichus. In this, you get the dynamic where the guys don't necessarily start with the idea of sharing the girl. They mostly all want her for themselves, but they slowly kind of agree to share it because they have such a strong bond together and because the situation just brings the FMC to kind of be with them all together. Because sometimes in Waichus you get kind of the opposite where the guys already either had before or are expecting right now to share a girl. So here it's more like the Waichus builds itself throughout the story and slowly as the relationships evolve. And there's also great spice. So I encourage you to give it a try. Next, I read Addicted for Now by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is the third book in the Addicted series and I love that series so much. So this story is told in first person, you get dual POVs. It's the story of Lily and Lo. The premise of this series is that Lily and Lo are childhood best friends. Both of them have an addiction. Lo is an alcoholic and Lily is addicted to sex. And for years they have been faking a relationship to kind of hide their addiction to their friends and family. So the first book starts when they are in that fake relationship and then you see them evolve, trying to heal from that addiction, trying to be a better person for each other. And you slowly follow them throughout that journey. I can't explain how this is so addictive, not to do a bad play of words, but it's really addictive. I don't know how, it's just so gripping. It's been a while since I read the second book. I just opened it and got instantly sucked in that world with these characters. I just love them so much. It's really hard to describe, I don't understand, and usually when I read a book, I'm kind of enjoying it, but recently I've been finding myself enjoying a book, but at the same time wanting to finish it as soon as possible because I want to get to the next book, and I don't know how these authors did it, but I didn't feel that for a second. I couldn't stop and I wanted so much more. I'm telling you, it's so hard to describe, and usually addiction is not my favorite theme in a book. I don't know why, because it's so toxic and hard to read because of how the people who suffer from it are not themselves and are destroying their lives and their relationships. I don't know. It's a thing that usually makes me uncomfortable, but in this, I don't know, again, how the authors did it, but they presented it in a way that didn't make me uncomfortable, but that felt so realistic. At the same time, I think that they portrayed it really well and portrayed how the struggle is really kind of a slow progression, but in waves. Like the progress is not only going in an upward straight line, but in a upward, but with waves, which is kind of normal when you're in that kind of healing and process to get out of an addiction. So it's the normal process. They depicted it really well. And the love story between Lily and Lo is so touching. I love them so much. And I think I've discovered my favorite kind of friends to lovers is when they are childhood friends to lovers. And it's this book that made me realize that. Because they know each other so well. They can just look at the other and know what they're thinking, what they're feeling. They see other people interacting with the other and they know instantly, okay, she's not gonna like that. Okay, she's gonna react this way. Okay, that person should have done that. And I just love that so much. And also with childhood best friends to lovers, as we get in these, the two main characters are a team and they are each other's ride or die. Is that the expression? Ride or die? well, they will do anything for the other one and they are each other's first choice. I just love that so much when both characters support each other without doubt, without question, without judging. And that's what these two characters are about. And on top of that, if it wasn't enough, all the side characters who will get also their books are amazing. I'm already in love with all of them. I can't wait for them to have their books. Well, they already have it. It's just I haven't gotten to it yet because I'm getting the new Berkeley editions. I want all of my books to fit, so I'm waiting for them to come out, and when they will be out, I will read them all. But all of these characters are amazing. I connected to all of them. They are all interesting and intriguing in their own way, and I love their interactions altogether so much. The humor is excellent. Lo's dry humor particularly is delightful. I love him so much and he's so funny. But all of their interactions actually just were delightful. I was eating it up. It's rare that I'm so attached to a story and characters because usually I'm the kind of reader who is done with the book and the characters as soon as I'm through with it. Like, I don't like bonus epilogues. I don't like bonus stories. Usually when the last story is finished, I'm done with it. Like, I enjoyed it. It has a special place in my heart, but I'm not looking for any kind of stories to see how they're doing, you know? But with this story and these characters, I would read them just eating breakfast and going grocery shopping. It's addictive, it's amazing, the interactions, the characters are my favorite things, but my number one favorite thing is definitely these two main characters and their relationship. It's precious. I love it. Warning though, it is a story about addiction, so it's already a hard topic sometimes to read. If it's more a sensible subject for you, just make sure that you're going to be okay with it. And you have to be ready for the journey that these characters will go through. At first, they are not super healthy for each other, not necessarily consciously, but because they want to support each other somehow, even though they indulge each other in their own addiction and help each other hiding it from their family. So they do grow, but it's a slow and normal process, but it's a slow process. It does evolve, I'm assuring you, but you have to be ready for that journey and be ready for them not always to be the best for each other, even though they are still amazing at the same time, but you have to be ready for that. And this is definitely a top series for me. I'm not even through with it yet, and I already love it to pieces. Highly recommend. And if it wasn't clear enough, this is a 5 stars. Next, I selected for my challenge to read more from Quebecer authors this book, which is a French book. It's called L'Imparfait Assassin. It's written by Lydia Lagarde. So this was my first French book that I've read in a long while. It's been many years since I've read in French. French is my first language, so this can seem weird, but I slowly want to get back to French reading because I want to support authors that come from where I'm from. So I tried this one. Sadly, I DNF'd it after how many pages? A bit after 100 pages. Mostly I didn't vibe with the writing. I felt it was on the surface a bit and I didn't like how the author kind of wrote the story in general. It's a personal thing, but it didn't vibe with me. And I realized that the story was not as much a romance as I thought it would be. So basically the story is a fantasy or dystopian story. You're in a world where there's no technology and the army and like emergency services are replaced by what they call assassins. The assassins are people who are trained from childhood to help people, protect the people. So at the beginning you meet 3 assassins that you don't know much about, and then there's kind of a big flashback to their youth where you learn who they are, how they become what they've become, and you follow kind of their journey. So a big part of the book is happening in the past when they are kids, and you follow them when they are kids. So that is also something that kind of threw me off a bit because I didn't want to spend so much time in the past, and certain dialogues felt a bit cheesy or awkward to me. Like I said, again, it's maybe just a me thing, but for me, it kind of felt cringy a bit. So sadly, it didn't work for me. If you understand French, you could pick it up if the story interests you. It's not translated in English though, I don't think so, but I still wanted to show it to you and tell you a bit about it. Then for another of my monthly bookish challenges, I do the 12 Friends Book Recs in 12 months challenge. So every month I have to read a book recommended by one of my friends. And this month I chose to read the Mindf series by St. Abbey. So this series is a 5 novella series. This one is the omnibus, so you get all the novellas in one book. It's a dark romance, it's told in the first person, and you get mostly a dual POV. I know this book is very popular in the dark romance world, but basically she's a serial killer and he is a profiler in the FBI. So the two main characters meet in a cafe one day and they start a relationship. Little does he know she is the serial killer in one of the cases he's investigating. As I said before, this is a dark romance and there are very dark situations mentioned in there with graphic things. So please check the trigger warnings before you get into this. Because of what was described, it was one of the darkest I've read, in my opinion. But you have to know, and I like to make that difference with dark romances, the subjects and the themes are dark, and one of the characters is really morally gray, if you want to say so, because she's a serial killer. But there is no dark elements in the romantic relationship, if that makes sense. So overall, I highly, highly enjoyed that series. I had a blast. It was really well written. It was a really good story. What I love the most about it is the intricacy of the mystery and the story and kind of the suspense throughout the books. It really felt like I was watching a police investigation TV show. It was so intense, but it was so good. And the more you discover about the character's past and what happened to her, it gets more and more enthralling. And I think the author overall just wrote the story really, really well. Everything was woven with a great attention to details. I really enjoyed that, and I also really liked the female main character. She was so cool, such a badass. I just loved her. So for each of the novellas individually, like the first two, I didn't like them as much because it was more focused on the love relationship. Don't get me wrong, I think I gave them a 4 stars, which is still pretty good, but it was more focused on the love story and it was very much insta-love, insta-lust, which is really not my thing. And I'm usually not a fan of novellas, so the first two weren't my favorite. But after that, the third novella was a 4.5 stars for me because it slowly picked up and we got more of the backstory of the characters. And book 4 and 5 destroyed me. It was amazing. I gave them both 5 stars. It just grabbed me by the gut. I felt so much. It was so good. I think my favorite was book 4, but book 4 and 5 were 5 stars. Needless to say, at first I was a bit apprehensive because of the insta-love, insta-lust situation that I didn't know about before getting into it. And when I realized that, I was kind of scared that I was not going to like the rest of the series, but I'm so glad that I pulled through because it was amazing and I understand why so many people love it. Next, another of my favorite, To Flame a Wildflower by Sarah A. Parker. This is the 3rd book in the Crystal Bloom series. The first 2 books are To Bleed a Crystal Bloom and To Snap a Silver Stem. This is a dark fantasy romance. It's told in first person and you get multiple POVs. Overall, this series, I think most people go in blind because when you try to describe the first book, it's really hard to describe the premise or what it's about because it's still very mysterious. But what I can tell you is that you get a unique world, and even after the 3rd book, you still have so much to discover and so many questions, but still more answers than in the first book. It's very mysterious what the world is about, what's happening, who are these characters. One thing I'm very surprised about this story is that it's a multi-POV, like I said, and recently I haven't been such a fan of these kind of books because you get a lot of POV, a lot of story, a lot of characters, and that sometimes can feel like a lot. Not that I dislike it, but I haven't felt really inclined to read these kind of books for a while. But with this series, I don't know how the author did it, but I'm really enjoying all the POVs and this doesn't bother me. Although it's a big world and there's a lot of information, and I do wish that I would have done a reread of the first 2 books before this one came out and I jumped into it. Because I was a bit lost at the beginning and I'm still not sure I got all that was being said because I forgot so many things from the first 2 books. But that's a me thing, it's just my memory is so bad. As soon as I close a book, I forget the characters' names, what happened. So it's really a me thing. But if you're like me and you've read the first 2 books a while ago and you want to get to this one, I highly encourage you to do a reread of the first 2 books. What else can I say about this book? The tension. The tension, my friends, is so good. This author is a master in weaving the tension throughout the characters' interactions. It's delightful. It's so good. I don't understand how she does it, but every time the two main characters are together, I feel it in my bones. It's so good. And this romance is a slow burn throughout the series, so the tension is even more important and, for me, delightful because of that. There's also a lot of angst. The writing is really poetic. There's a lot of metaphors. Even for me, who English is not the first language, it was still readable and understandable and wasn't too heavy, but it may take just some time to adjust when you start the series. Overall, I gave this a 5 stars. It's amazing. It's different. It's unique. I'm really loving it. I've never read anything quite like it before. It's one of my favorite series and I highly recommend it. Then I was feeling for something fast and easy to read, so I picked up this novella, The Fighter's Prize by Jessa Kane. Okay, if you've never heard about Jessa Kane, she's a wild ride, I will say. I know her for her spicy novellas. I never read anything from her. This was my first book from her, but I've heard so many things about her. So I knew going in that I needed to expect very spicy, crazy stories, very alpha male, with kind of over-the-top vocabulary, if I want to say. So I know what to expect when I got into this. In the end, I really don't know how to rate this. And at the same time, I'm not such a fan of novellas because they feel too rushed for me. It's rare that I connect with the characters and with the story in general. I'm a slow burn gal through and through, so novellas usually are quite the opposite of that. And I have to say that with this book specifically, I haven't read any other things from Jessa Kane, but this one left me quite neutral. Like, I didn't necessarily like it, but I didn't necessarily dislike it. The characters and the plot didn't make really any sense, but I was expecting that. And then again, it's a novella, so you don't get much time to develop characters. There were some moments that were okay, like that I enjoyed a bit. So yeah, I don't really know how to rate it. I'm not sure I'm gonna read another book from Jessa Kane, or maybe if someone would suggest me one in particular. I don't know if this one is really representative of her work, but yeah. Overall, the story is that the female main character is to be sold by her father to a MMA fighter. So to prevent that, she goes to see the opponent of his next fight and wants to entice him, encourage him to win, because somehow if the man doesn't win, he's not gonna get hurt. So she goes to his opponent to ask him to beat him for her. And somehow when they meet, sparkles fly, the heat goes up, and he decides that he wants to beat the other man because he wants her for himself. And that's about it. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but at the same time, I'm not the best judge for it. I'm realizing that maybe I'm not the right clientele for these kind of books. I kind of wanted to like it though, because what I heard from this author seems kind of just crazy fun, but this one just didn't do for me. So tell me if you've read Jessa Kane. Should I try something else, and what should I try from her? Because for now, I'm not convinced. And for my last reads of the month, I read the Not Their Toy series by AJ Merlin. The first book is Vile Boy, and the second book is Wicked Girl. It's a duet. It's an Omegaverse romance. It's told in first person, and you only get the POV of the female main character. In the story, you get diversity. You also get representation. The female main character has a hearing disability. I forgot to say it's also a bully romance, so check the trigger warnings. And briefly, if you don't know what Omegaverse is about, I have to say I don't know much either. This is my second Omegaverse series, and I think depending of the series, it can be a bit different. But here you are in a contemporary setting, and people are in 3 different designations, either Alpha, Omega, or Beta. So you are born into one of these designations, and it kind of puts you in a certain role in society. Alphas are like leaders, and there's this kind of nodding thing in spicy scenes. The betas are kind of more neutral, I want to say, and omegas are more submissive from what I understand, and they go through this kind of heat cycle once in a while where they want the nut from an alpha. That's how I would describe it. I think alphas also have heat cycles. They may be triggered by omegas, I'm not sure. Anyway, that's what I can say, that's what I understand. And the 2 I've read so far are kind of polyamorous relationships also. And I would describe the relationships more as polyamorous than white shoes, because they mostly are all together or almost all together. Then again, from the 2 I've read. Overall, I really enjoyed these 2 books. It was really fun. I really enjoyed the first book way more than the second book. The first book, I gave it a 5 stars, and I think the second book was more of a 4 stars. I'm not sure yet how I feel about Omegaverse romances. I need to read more of them. What I liked about these books, the female main character was really badass. I really loved her. I love that she had a hearing disability. I love that she was also doing archery. That was so cool. And the spice was amazing. The heat was there. There's a group scene in there that's really, really well done. And there's also pet play in this. I was curious. It was the first time that I've ever read that in a book. And I have to say it was fun. It was entertaining. So bonus points for the spice. And even though the second book wasn't as good as the first book, I would still recommend them. And that's it. That was my month. This is everything I read this month. I hope you had fun watching this. Tell me if you've read any of these. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for being here, besties. If you want to see more of me, you can go see my book talk and my bookstagram account. And as always, if you like this, please like and subscribe. I love you. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye! We're gonna go. This is a hug. Our next. So get diversity, there's humor. Next we got first book is Brighter Than Gold. No. Next I read Addicted for Now. And I think they portrayed really, and I think they portrayed it, and when they, I did, then for another of my, it's an Omegaverse. Anyway, yeah, that's